Hi, my name's Phil. I like to talk about politics, and in this video I'd like to discuss the revelation that a cabinet minister, Robert Jenrick, unlawfully, potentially fiddled the Treasury out of at least 40 million quid, has accepted that he has done this, and yet still remains a government minister. Potentially because he's happy to go on the telly defending the law breaking of Johnson's handler, Dominic Cummings. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, then please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So this story concerns Housing Secretary Robert Jenrick approving the property development for a billionaire Tory donor by the name of Richard Desmond. Now, if his name is familiar, it's because he's the guy who used to own The Express, which is the right-wing newspaper that slavishly backs the Conservatives. Now, Jenrick was approached to rubber stamp the application for development when the local council, Tower Hamlets Council, who would normally decide such matters, were taking time to make their decision. Now, by getting the decision rushed through, Desmond was able to avoid the new rates coming online, which would have cost him an extra 40 million quid. So in other words, this decision has cost, the public 40 million quid that would otherwise have been able to be spent on public services. Now, at the time, the government's planning inspector advised Jenrick not to approve the scheme for, amongst other things, it wasn't providing enough affordable housing. Now, with property developments, developers naturally want to maximise their profits. That's fine. That's how you run a business. I've got no issue with that. But of course, that doesn't help people who cannot afford normally priced houses. So it's not socially responsible. Enter the government. This is where the government are supposed to come in with regulation. That thing that Brexiteers seem to think is bad for us. And development schemes are supposed to include a certain level of affordable housing so that people in the local area can benefit from the housing development. Now, Desmond's scheme did not, in the opinion of Jenrick's advisor, or the council it seems, provide enough of this. Needless to say, Tower Hamlets Council were less than impressed with a government minister effectively usurping their authority, undermining it certainly, and they decided to take legal action. This was on the basis that the timing of the decision, which was literally the day before the new rates came online, was biased in order to allow this billionaire Tory donor to avoid paying his fair share of rates. After all, it's not like the council had denied permission for the scheme. They just hadn't given it approval yet. They weren't yet happy with it, presumably because they wanted Desmond to improve his proposal, potentially along the same lines as Jenrick's own department in terms of affordable housing. Now, as part of the legal action, Jenrick would have had to have handed over all of his correspondence relating to his involvement with Desmond and the planning proposal. So rather than do this, the minister accepted that he acted unlawfully and that he appeared to show bias. He's not saying he did show bias. He's saying, yeah, I accept that it would appear that I've shown bias, and he's accepted that he acted unlawfully in his decision. Now, the thought that immediately occurred to me is, how damaging must this correspondence be that a minister admits to not only breaking the law, but, this is corruption. Admitting to corruption in government just to avoid scrutiny over the full extent of what he really did. Oh my goodness. But the bottom line is that he admitted to making a biased, unlawful decision. It goes without, a seemingly biased, but definitely unlawful decision. And it goes without saying that the development approval has, of course, had to be cancelled and passed on to another minister. Quite why it's not been passed back to the council, I don't know. Doesn't really matter. It also resulted in the resignation of the leader of the local Conservatives in Tower Hamlets. So even the local Conservatives were appalled by this behaviour, which tells you how dodgy it was. But, that's not the main point. I don't do videos about dodgy deals as such, because, it's I could be doing them all day. They happen all the time. I'm disappointed to say they happen all the time. We have a corrupt government, and even if we didn't have an especially corrupt government, corruption does exist in all strands of government, including local government. What I want to know is, what for me makes this serious, like really, really serious, is why a minister who has just admitted to corruption in high office is still a government minister. And why are they? Why is this government minister going on to, why did he go on telly yesterday to try and say what a thoroughly decent chap Dominic Cummings is? I mean, I can't follow it. Minister who admitted to being corrupt by giving a biased decision in favour of a Tory donor that costs the public says that Cummings is a thoroughly decent chap. I mean, you can trust me. I can't remember any point in my life when a minister having to admit something like this could possibly keep his or her job. It's not even like he's a strong minister for the government, that he's one of their stars or anything, you know, that they can't afford to lose. And yet, how many people even know about this? Maybe this is why he's ultimately kept his job, because it's hardly headline news. There's one or two other little stories with higher prominence at the moment. But this is what is so dysfunctional about this country right now. A senior member of the government admits corruption, and there isn't even a clamour for his resignation, or if there is, it can't be heard above the din of all the more serious shit that's going on right now. And of course, no such resignation is forthcoming. Oh, and for Americans who may be nodding sagely at this point, stroking their beards or whatever it is you stroke, towards the apathy towards corruption in government, one thing about it may well shock you, and it is just how cheap it is to buy our ministers off. This £1 billion development that Jenrick approved to save Desmond £40 million. So from Desmond's point of view, getting this rubber stamped was worth at least £40 million to him personally. How much do you think the bribe was? How much do you need to bribe a minister in order to save yourself 40 million quid? I mean, technically nothing for that. All Desmond donated, as far as I can tell, the sum total of his donation was £10,000. And it was to the party a few years ago, I think. That's it, £10,000. And that was enough to call in the favour later on. Maybe it wasn't even a single charge donation. Maybe he can use it again and again. Maybe he'd used it in the past, we just don't know. That's how cheap it is to buy off our government. Jenrick himself wouldn't have even had a share of it. Not a single brown paper bag for himself. But there it is. I hope the police will be investigating this after it has been reported now in the Times. Oh, I just said that. Who am I kidding? Even if they do say they will be investigating it, nothing will come of it with these footpads in charge, of course. But anyway, I hope you found the video interesting. If you did, don't forget to click the like button. And if you'd like to support the channel further, then please also click the Patreon link for details. And until next time, I'll see you later.